During the 20th century, deep Southerners attempted to segregate black people from white people because they regarded African Americans as lesser human beings. The first step to achieve this was the creation and enforcement of Jim Crow laws, resulting in the racial segregation of nearly all aspects of life. For many people, there's a disconnect that exists between the passage of such laws and the fact that they were being created by elected officials. The National Center for Civil and Human Rights plays a major role in correcting these misconceptions and reminding people who passed those laws.
The National Center for Civil and Human Rights, or the NCCHR, was founded in order to teach visitors about the civil rights movement and the continuing fight for human rights. To accomplish this, the center takes advantage of different forms of communication to convey their messages regarding white supremacy as it existed in the past and as it continues to exist in modern society. Some examples of the way that the NCCHR takes advantage of how it can show information to its viewers, including the creation of an aesthetic akin to that of the civil rights movement and showing video footage of major events during the time period, such as Theophilus Bull Connor's reactions to the protests in Birmingham.
What does the NCCHR's use of Theophilus Bull Connor's actions have in regards to enhancing the education of the history surrounding white supremacy? By showing that relatively powerful elected officials, such as Bull Connor, were often white supremacists, the NCCHR helps enhance the learning experience through creating an atmosphere similar to the civil rights era and showing how commonplace white supremacy was, using Bull Connor's actions as an example.
During the Birmingham campaign, Bull Connor, the Commissioner of Public Safety, acted cruelly towards Dr. King and the SCLC. He used fire hoses and police dogs to attack those protesting. He incarcerated 949 children at the event. The nation was shocked, and President Kennedy agreed that racial equality was necessary for the success of the country. Birmingham officials agreed to eliminate all the signs and promoted segregationist ideals. Can best learn about the dubious acts of Bull Connor. The NCCHR creates an atmosphere similar to the civil rights era. One way the center accomplishes this is by choosing to show the footage on retro TVs. There is also an office door with Bull Connor's name on it in a dimly lit part of the museum. The darkness symbolizes the reign of segregationists in the United States government, while the door exemplifies how Bull Connor and many others were allowed to be openly racist against their citizens. As the goal is to immerse visitors in the civil rights era, using the older prompts is the first step in getting visitors to connect with the time period.
Government officials, ranking both high and low, actively promoted and defended the ideas behind racial segregation and inequality. To modern-day Americans, this fact is especially powerful, as although most are aware of issues with equality and government in contemporary America, the majority still believe that for the most part, governments try to serve all of their citizens, or at least discriminate more discreetly. Seeing a member of the Ku Klux Klan standing up and advocating for racial inequality, and even the use of violence against the black community, is something nearly everyone would find detestable, but it would not surprise anyone. However, seeing elected officials such as Bull Connor make these same statements has a far greater impact on the average visitor, as elected officials are viewed as the people who we rely on to represent and defend all of their citizens. Seeing them do the extreme opposite is shocking.
There are advantages to watching a speech on a television as opposed to reading the speech notes or listening to it on the radio. For example, visual recordings convey nonverbal information which both written and audio texts are unable to convey. This opens up a whole new dimension for viewers to be actively understanding the speech rather than just passively listening or reading to it. Nonverbal forms of information, to name a few, include hand gestures, facial expressions, or head nods. According to the article, the communication of inferior and superior attitudes by verbal and nonverbal signals. Nonverbal cues had 4.3 times the effect as verbal cues in controlled, moderated clips, meaning that differences in nonverbal signals had much more of an effect than an actual change in verbal output.
Although the Bull Connor era represents a very dark time for American politics, a period in which elected officials use their power to wrongfully suppress the rights of African Americans, the NCCHR uses various means to communicate the information about him using imagery and footage from the time period to exemplify who Bull Connor truly was and the terrible impact his actions had. The atmosphere puts the audience into the shoes of the public at the time, which benefits the learning experience and gives visitors a sense of what it was like at the time.